Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi, I'm Tyson Bankert.
Tyson, we've been talking a lot about having the skills for listening, for empathy mapping, for understanding where people are rooted in time and space and what their location is.
Hmm.
I hear a lot of is somebody saying, yeah, but why is it all on me? Why isn't the other person responsible and why don't they have an obligation to hear my perspective? Why are you telling me that I have to pull all of these strands together and I've got to know this and this and this? I'm a no.
I'm done.
Person has to make some effort as well.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
say,
Stop victim blaming. No, just kidding. Um, oh, I think that can be such a hard position to be in, to be the one who is in the know, has the taken on the emotional labor, who is who is always having to be the one to respond to the conflict. Um, I I think, and even knowing, and I think just the idea of knowing that you are in control of what kinds of things that able and willing to be involved in when it comes to conflict is in of itself a position that the other person may not be aware of. And so you're always having to take that kind of responsibility. It can be hard for sure. I think one thing I think about, and sometimes when I'm that person or I feel that way, it's also about, am I is this the right kind of relationship dynamic that I want to keep being in? Or still falling into a pattern of conflict. So it makes me wonder, how competent actually am I? Right? Am I asking the right questions? Am I creating the right conditions for that person to respond in a way that is meaningful for me as well? Because at the end of the day, it does take two to tango. If I'm dancing by myself and constantly having to move the other person, are we really in the right dynamic?
Good point. Is this a healthy relationship for me to be in if there's no mutuality or
Hmm.
reciprocity? I
But what would you say, Deborah? Because I feel like,
I,
yeah.
I tend to have three answers. The
Oh,
first
okay.
is, do you want to be in a conflict with this person? And
Mm,
if you have the skills to shift the dynamic, there's really no good reason not to do it. And if you're concerned that the person never reciprocates, you can say, you know what, I've listened to you. I have a different perspective. Let me repeat back to you what I think your perspective is so that I show you I understand you. And then I'm going to ask you to give me some time and to show that you understand me.
mm,
And I'm prepared to do that emotional labor because I value this relationship or I don't want us to part on this bad taste in our mouth. So that's the first one is you have the skills, feel good about using them. The second is how you feel about yourself. If
mm,
you do all of the emotional labor and you get nothing in return, you can still feel good about yourself. I made that person feel understood. So I forget which famous actress or important person said it, but she said, people don't remember how smart you are, they remember how you made them feel. If
mhm,
you have the opportunity to make somebody feel good, why why wouldn't you? They're
mm,
going to feel good about you going forward. They're going to perhaps show more interest. It may be that it's a one-off, you'll never see them again, but you've still brightened somebody's day. The third thing I say, and I use Big Bang Theory as an example, but
mhm.
any sitcom will do. So you have Sheldon, who is one of my favorite characters, says or does something, and everybody's jaw drops.
Right.
but they don't respond. Meanwhile, the studio audience is killing themselves laughing. What if you imagined you had that studio audience? And when you respond with compassion and empathy and you make that person feel good and supported, your studio audience, who's invisible to everybody but you, they're cheering you on.
Mm. I think the best part about those options is that those are options that the person who's being competent can make, right? They can choose what those are, and able to, flip back and forth between those three, and are a combination of all of them, and being able to um, take solace in like that is your choice as the person who's able to be competent and address, you can only control what you can control.
That reminds me of a fourth is
Oh,
on this person, you're practicing your skills, you're becoming better at it.
right.
So on the one, you feel better about yourself. On the second, you're making somebody feel better about themselves. On the third, you've got your studio audience cheering you on. And on the fourth, you're practicing your skills so you're better at them. All of this accrues to you, to your benefit. So when you say, but the other person isn't reciprocating, that doesn't mean you're not getting a benefit. You
Mhm,
are, you're growing yourself.
mhm.
That's your conflict competency. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and please like, subscribe, and follow along for next week for more conflict competence skills.